Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard emerges with people from all walks of life who, through their own unique angle, succeed and flourish. Enjoy the ride and welcome to Unique Ways, an audio podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. Got a really awesome guest on today. He's an accomplished graphic designer with 14 plus years experience, and currently he's the director of design at Concrete in Toronto. Please join me in welcoming Jonathan Yule. Welcome.
Well, thank you.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
Let's do it.
Great. Question one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
That's a big question. Like you mentioned, I'm director of design at Concrete here in Toronto. And so that takes up a large chunk of my time. Um, and Concrete, we're a creative agency, and so we work with brands from around the world. And my day to day is sort of working with the team. You know, sorry. um, it's okay if we restart that.
Sure, yeah, or just continue, I think.
Um, and Yeah, I mean, most of my day is sort of, working with the team on all sorts of projects, different brands from across Canada, around the world. Um, recently I was, over in Hamburg, Germany for a photo shoot, just overseeing that. Um, and also I'm a dad of two young kids too. So a lot of my time is also spent, just being with them and getting them to everywhere they need to go.
Great. And just a note for our audience, if you guys are interested in other high-profile Canadian episodes, check out the episode with Marianne Banshees. It's a great one. Question two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
I've thought a lot about this, and I think one of the things that I think has set me apart in my career is just being able to keep both the small details in mind of the larger picture. And so what I mean by that is, when we're working with a client, they have big goals in mind,
Mm.
whether it's sort of transform their business or, sometimes we work with startups and, it's sort of creating something new. Um, but for me, what I've realized is that I'm able to communicate how all the small details all lead and impact that larger picture. Um, and so I'm able to communicate really well with clients of how small, minute details about graphic design, whether it's the typography or the shape of a letter or a logo or a word mark, how that has a greater impact on their business as a whole. And just being able to communicate that really clearly.
Great, I like that. So question three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
That's the why is always you end up starting in a career. I started when I was in school, basically the iPhone came out, which obviously changed everything about the world and design and technology. But at the same time, when I was in school, I was trained in a way that was still very much rooted in um, the physical, we used to have to mount projects on illustration board and
Mm.
work in a letterpress studio. And so I was able to have this connection to the history of graphic design with technology. And technology has always been, part of my life. I've always loved computers since I was a young kid. And so being able to combine the physicality of old school graphic design with new technology has just been sort of the main driving factor for me for the last 14 years, like you said. Um, and every time that there's sort of a new technology or a new program that is um, become a part of the design process, I've been able to apply all of those principles I learned
Mm,
back then to a new program or to a new a new problem or a new situation.
mm,
And that's what I think motivates me is just the sort of the constant challenge of what's new and what's next. I think that that's probably the most personally motivating part.
very cool. So question four is one that sometimes people struggle with, but the question is, what does your future look like?
I can understand why people struggle with it because it's so hard to predict the future in any way.
Mm,
Um, and so it's yeah, that one. I think for the immediate future, I think really it's just about seeing my kids and seeing their development,
mm,
and just seeing, their, my daughter, she's 7 years old now, and just the her observations of the world um, are just so different than my own perception of the world.
mm,
And so it's really just sort of just keeping my mind open and just seeing how they start to experience the world. And I know it's not really what does the future hold for me, but I just it's there's just so much possibility and excitement. Yeah, I don't know
No,
if that's
great.
exactly what you're looking for in the idea of the future, but that's it's a personal one, I would say.
Great. So number five, we say is unique to the show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Um, being in Toronto in Canada, we're it's one of the biggest cities in Canada. So there's a design industry here and there's a lot of different industry, but it sort of pales in comparison to a place like New York or, even um, the West Coast or
Mm,
London, England, or, these other sort of hubs around the world for graphic design. And so we've always sort of been a bit separate from these bigger um scenes for design, um which in some ways when I first started I thought it was a bit we weren't really sort of on that stage, but after COVID and everybody moving to you know sort of a remote first mentality, it really freed up an opportunity for us to to compete with a lot of those agencies that either in New York or LA or England or you know around the world essentially. And so it became less of a concern. But what I find it really interesting about concrete and us being in Toronto, and we're on the west end of Toronto. We're not even really in the downtown core. Is that we get to be around everything that's happening, but we're also separate enough from everything that's happening to really just sort of sit back and observe and really, um, sort of think about things in a deeper way. Um, I think is I don't know if it's unique, but it's nice to be able to, um, especially in the world of design, that's sort of so driven by what people perceive to be trends. It allows us to sort of sit back and just think about things a little bit longer. That I think is really interesting.
Nice, yeah, that makes sense. Number six, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
Uh, Buy some stock in some companies a lot sooner. But in terms of my career, I think the thing I would tell my younger self is that comparing yourself to others, it doesn't really lead to um, better outcomes for yourself. I think it's really try and focus on the work itself, what you're doing. Um, Try not to compare yourself to everyone else around you because they're all doing their own thing, and I need to be doing my own thing. And it took me a while to um, realize that I was really comparing myself to a lot of other people when really when I started to just focus on the things that I really cared about, did I feel like my career really started to um, take off. And so I think my advice would just be do those things sooner. Don't worry so much about, early in my career, there was a whole idea of, oh, should designers code or should designers do X? And um, I think it was good that I just tried all those things out just to see if it made sense. But at the I that time that I spent doing those things wasn't necessarily spent towards doing what I found really interesting and what ended up being really useful for my career, which was you know typography, um, and diving deep into this thing that I care so deeply about, and that others don't necessarily give the same weight to.
Mhm.
Um, I wish I had done it even more than what I had done before. Um, Although some people would say I'm pretty deep into typography, and type design and all these things, but I just wish I'd done it more.
Maybe I'll do another call out for the audience here. If you guys are interested in the typography episodes, definitely check out the one with Eric Speakerman. He's a big name in the type world. So question seven, what's a day in your life like?
A day in my life is get up fairly early, um, get the kids off to school and daycare, um, and then go to the office. And every day at the office, or the studio is different. If it's the beginning of the week, we have a lot of um, just meetings and discussions about what's going on in the studio, what projects are ongoing, who needs to be doing what. Just really sort of figuring out the game plan for the week. And then, between myself and the other directors at the studio, it's really a project by project basis where we're working with the teams, depending on the phase of the project. Um, you know, Lunchtime is really important for us at the studio, and us taking the time. to have lunch and really there's a lot of things that at the during that time where you're just talking um amongst ourselves, and you just end up talking about things happening in the world, you know movies that you've watched, or things that are happening, and it doesn't seem like much, and it doesn't we try and avoid talking about design, but talking about the culture and what's happening is just so informative to our day to day. So that happens basically almost every single day. And then you know the afternoons, a typical day would also include quite a few client meetings, or um calls or discussions, as well. And then the afternoons, ideally, um even I have some time to work on um the projects themselves, whether it's it depends on the project, where sometimes I'll still be designing, or I'll be reviewing the designer's work. And then yeah, it's pick up the kids, go home, make dinner, all those sorts of things, and start all over again. Um, yeah.
Great. So eight is around lifelong learning. It's a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
Hmm. There's lots of different ways. So one, I follow a lot of different accounts on Twitter and Instagram, and um, and by following so many accounts, just interesting things arise. And whether it's somebody recommending an article or a book, or um, a discussion, I'll save all I save a lot of things, and so I'll go back through and review, and either read the article or read the book, or um but on a sort of more day-to-day basis, what's actually sort of kept me in the loop about things is a podcast, um um from a website, Stratechery. And every day, he's sort of giving different analysis about something that's happening in the world of technology. And that's just been a really good way for me to just keep up with what's happening in technology. And um, just because it impacts so much of the world, and the way that design interacts with the world is through the use of technology. And so keeping up with what's happening with technology has been a good way for me to sort of keep up with the overall world of design, because the actual principles and the 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 idea of design, um the fundamentals are sort of unchanging. And there's a lot of things that happen in the world in terms of design, in terms of um you know brands changing, or new things coming out. But at the same time, you know, I try not to get caught up in the day-to-day trends of the industry. And I try and focus more on what's happening at the world at large, because I think that's going to have a much bigger impact on the way that we approach work, and the way that we have to work too is so far out. Things that come into the studio, they may not exist in the world for 6 months to a year later. And so to try and predict what's going to be happening, then you have to really look at the bigger trends that's happening in the world, and sort of be in tune with the overall culture and where things are going as well.
Great. So maybe this ties into number nine. The question is around tools. Do you use digital and analog tools?
Yeah. So computer, huge part. Um, so yeah, we use Macs. I've been a big fan of the Mac for a very long time. Um, if you had asked me about 10 years ago, I could have given you a more sort of big list of sort of different programs I like to use, but really it boils down to for me these days is so I love Keynote. It's a great program. We build all of our presentations in Keynote. I love glyphs for drawing type. Um, I'd say actually the music app is probably a big one. Just listening to music is just so important, um, at least for my own process. Um, and then in terms of the physical, I always have a notebook by my side, just ready to jot things down. I've tried doing notes by typing them out on the computer, but there's just something about just the physicality of moving a pen to record something that just seems to make it stick a lot more. For at least for myself. Um, and yeah, we use you know, email and Slack and all the, and the Adobe suite. I mean, I've got lots of different views on Adobe, but it's still the industry standard, so it's very much a part of our work. And more and more, it's actually become the video editing and After Effects and Premiere have just become just a bigger part of our overall workflow. Um, so yeah, it's there's um, nothing really that special or interesting, I would say. I think it's just really on how you use them.
Great. Halfway number 10. How do you deal with work life or life work balance?
Um, hmm. I think the biggest thing for myself is um, I love what I do. Um, and is what I always imagined I would be doing. Working in a design studio and getting to, you know, create brands, or revitalize them or, all the parts of it. And so the the separation from life and work is sort of, when you're so deeply involved with a project, you can't help but think about it and think about um, things about it that, you may be out and about and just an idea comes to you and, you want to either record it as soon as possible or try it out as soon as possible. And so it's, I think that's the most amazing part of my job is that I get to, um, be creative in so many different ways every single day that, um, I don't necessarily see the work as separated from my life. Obviously, I get to spend a lot of time with my kids and my family. And they inspire me so much. That it's hard for me to see them as completely separate. I am pretty strict about, the the times in which um you know we get home and until their bedtime is all about them. And um but once everybody's once they're in bed, it's sort of, it really depends on what I've got going on. And yeah, it's I would personally say that it's balanced. But I'm very fortunate to be doing what I do.
Perfect. So number 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what might you be doing?
Um, well, that's a good question. I think I would be in a creative field of some sort. I do love um, programming and
Hmm.
computer science. I do have a strong affinity for that, but I'm nowhere near the sort of quote unquote real computer engineers in terms of ability. But I think I'd be doing something probably around um, programming of some sort, whether it's video games or um, because I do like the combination of creativity and technology. So I would probably look for other fields that combine it. Um, and originally what I wanted to go to school for was illustration. And obviously the world of illustrations in a tough place right now. So it probably wouldn't be a great career move, but that'd be that was my original passion. Um, and so maybe something with illustration or drawing or um, yeah, I think that would be what I'd be doing. But I am I am really doing what I love. And it's really hard to imagine what else I might be doing.
And what about what you would not like to do with your career?
Um, I would hate to stagnate and get stuck in old ways of doing things just because that was the way we've done them before. I think the just embracing what's next, I think is really important. Obviously, I think it's important to have an understanding of the history and the context in which um, I work. But yeah, I would really hate to just be stuck in my ways. And so yeah,
Okay, and how about a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
word, quote, or sentence. I'd have to pull it up if you don't mind. So this is a quote from Brian Eno. Um, So whatever you now find weird, ugly, uncomfortable, and nasty about a new medium will surely become its signature. CD distortion, the jitteriness of digital video, the crap sound of 8-bit, all of these will be cherished and emulated as soon as they can be avoided. It's the sound of failure. So much modern art is the sound of things going out of control, of a medium pushing to its limits and breaking apart. The distorted guitar sound is the sound of something too loud for the medium supposed to carry it. The blues singer with the cracked voice is the sound of an emotional cry too powerful for the throat that releases it. The excitement of grainy film, of bleached out black and white, is the excitement of witnessing events too monumentous for the medium assigned to record them. Um, and what I find really inspiring about that quote is the that embracing of a medium and its form, um, and what makes it unique, um, is just really interesting, and also this idea of, um, things that are uncomfortable at first eventually become what we, um, miss about something. And so whenever, someone talks about like, oh, we're going too far, or, um, I just think, eventually this will be commonplace, and, um, once the technology has improved so much, you'll miss it. And so I think a lot about that when we're creating things, um, at the studio, is that it's better to go too far, because you can always sand down the edges. Um, but if you're not going far enough, have you really explored what's interesting or what's new?
Nice. And a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Okay. My least favorite is the word timeless. And that's because usually when people say, oh, something's timeless, I think what they're actually trying to imply is that something feels, um, like it can last a long time or long lasting. Um, and it's not really up to me, um, whether or not something or not is timeless. It's really up to the world at large and the weight of time to decide if something is timeless or not. So when someone describes a design as timeless, I get a little irked, because it's not really for us to describe it like that. It's really for the world, to eventually decide that for us.
Great. So you're choosing one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
Ah, sorry, I'm just, summing yourself up in one word is quite a tall order. Hmm. Conflicted, I would say, if I had to sum it up in one word.
What keeps you up at night?
Um, well, I think really the the world, um, that my children will grow into. It definitely keeps me up at night. Especially with, an election coming up, in the States, and, um, the climate crisis, in general. Um, it all keeps me up at night.
Great. And final stretch here. What's a dream you're chasing?
A dream I'm chasing. It's I think a dream I'm chasing, and it feels like a lifelong pursuit of some ways is um this idea of shaping people's worlds in some way, whether it's small or big. Um, and really the idea of, to put it in more tangible terms, I love when I create a typeface and other people use my typeface to create things that I would have never been able to do myself, but that work I created shaped their work in some way and they interpret it in some way. Um, and so I think that that's a consistent dream of mine, is to create things that other people can use and interpret and create their own versions of. And I think that that's really, sort of a way to have a longer impact on people. I love when I hear from um, students that something that we worked on inspired them in some way. That I just want to create things I think inspire other people
Great. And ties in nicely. 18. What inspires you?
a lot. I think the most inspiring thing is just it comes in so many different forms. Music, I think, is such a huge one um, for myself, and this feeling of hearing something really interesting or compelling, and then it turns out it came out 40, 50 years ago. The idea that there could be this piece of recorded music from so long ago that captured an energy or a feeling of a particular person or moment in time, um, because it's so true to itself. I find that's really um, inspiring. Is this idea of capturing this moment in time somehow, but done in a way when people people listen to it years later, there's still something in it. There's an energy to it. I think that there's, if I can capture a slight percentage of that in the design work that I do, I think that that's a job well done. But and yeah, I think there's all sorts of different things. I think and it really depends on the what what I'm doing at a particular time. There's a video game that I've been playing recently called Pentiment, and it's this murder mystery about monks in an abbey in the Renaissance, and it's got the most incredible typography um, in it. That's so accurate to the time period it's trying to communicate, and the the level of attention to detail to something like that I find so inspiring, and to see that attention to detail in a medium like a video game, um, especially to typography, is just, there's somebody who cared a lot about that. And I think that level of care and attention to detail, I just find so inspiring.
Great. And last couple here, number 19. Any advice you'd like to share?
Um, hmm. I think the piece of advice that I would give is that there's a lot of, it's not really a piece of advice, it's more of a statement. Is that the people that, you know, there's a lot of hard work that goes into success. But there's also a tremendous amount of luck. Um, whether it's somebody um, being in the right place, the right time, having, you know, um, having connections, or, all the pieces, to it. But even if you have all those things, you still have to put in the hard work to make it happen as well. And so, um, the and the 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 hard work is, okay. I'm going to revise this. My biggest piece of advice is to try and find somebody that you admire, or the work that they create is something that you admire, and try and work with them. My career, you know, wouldn't be half of what it is if I wasn't able to surround myself with the people that I deeply admired and really cared about what they thought about the work I was, um, creating. And it just made me so much better. And the more that you can find those people to surround yourself with, the better work you're going to be able to create, because you just feed off of the energy and the sort of the feeling of those around you, and they make you better at what you do. um that'd be my biggest piece of advice.
Great. And finally, number 20. How can our listeners keep tabs on you, and what's our call to action?
So you can follow me on Twitter, or I guess it's called X now, at INVDR. You can also visit my website at jonathanyule.com. Jonathan spelled JONATHONYULE.com. And you can also see our work at concrete.ca.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining today. So glad to build out the Canada side of this, and especially on the east part of Canada. It's great to reach out to you guys. So thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
If you liked today's podcast, I encourage you to have a listen to other episodes. You can easily find them at uniqueways.ca or wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on social media. And thank you. It's you that makes these great, and it's you who these are for. Stay tuned for more unique ways.